Hello YouTube, this is the Phantom Outlaw coming back to you with another quick review. You may wonder what you're looking at there because it looks very similar. Well, to clear up some confusion, what I've got here are two Smith Wesson M&P Shields. They're both 9mm. There's a couple differences and we're going to go over them here in just a moment. But the reason there's two of them is recently my wife started talking about concealed carry. I guess the bigger issue for her is that she feels that there's a growing need to be aware of that concept. And with her PK380 from Walter that she had, she wasn't sure for two reasons if that was the gun for her as far as a concealed carry. The main reason is the caliber, a .380, and while I'm not here to debate the calibers, and stopping power, etc., etc. There's a bunch of videos out there on YouTube already. There's a bunch of opinions out there already, and I'll leave each of you to determine your own opinion on that. I'm not here to sway anybody one way or the other. There's valid reasons going for both directions, and that's fantastic. So go out there, watch some of the other videos, do some of your own research, and you'll come to your own conclusions. At any rate, my wife wasn't sure if the .380 caliber was the best option for her, and also in simple terms, the size. That Walther PK380 is a great gun to shoot. It's a lot of fun. It's easy, low recoil, very low recoil, and she has a lot of fun shooting it when she goes to the range, when she goes to her gun club meetings, when she does any kind of plinking. She really enjoys it. But it's part of the reason she likes it so much is the way it shoots. It's a low recoil gun as a .380 to start with. The fact that it's a little bit bigger .380 makes it that much easier. So anyhow, in a nutshell, those two reasons, the caliber and the size, she decided that probably was not going to be the best choice for her as far as a carry weapon. So we started looking around at some different things, and I'd already had my eye on a couple different things and thinking along the same lines. For me, the Glock 19 has basically been, or the 23, same size. Either one of those two have kind of been my go-to as far as what I would carry on a regular basis. But I also realized that with the size and to a degree the weight of those, that wouldn't be her first choice. Those weren't something size-wise, format-wise that she would be as comfortable with. So we started looking at some different items, and we went to the range and rented some guns and borrowed some guns with friends of ours, and tried some different things. And I let my wife decide what she wanted. I didn't want to give her any kind of sway either way on it. I had made up my own mind before she had, but that's because I had more experience and I'd had some more time with these different guns. So what she ended up going out and checking, she looked at the XDS, she looked at the Glock 26, she looked at the Shield 9mm, and I think she looked at one or two other ones, the Ruger PC9, I think. She looked at 4 or 5 different guns all told. She shot 3 of them, I believe. And ultimately, she said it was kind of a overwhelming choice for her. It was close, but it wasn't nearly as close as I thought it might be. And she chose the Shield. That just so happens that that's also the one that I had chosen also. Now, that shouldn't be a surprise to too many of you who have followed my videos. You already know I'm a big fan of the M&P line. I do shoot the full-size M&P for my IDPA matches, and I also own Glock, so I'm not bashing Glock by any stretch. But I started out with Glock at IDPA and ended up switching full-time to the Shield for a few different reasons, and that's not what this video is about. But so when she ended up going, and she doesn't really know particular brands or models or anything, so when she chose the M&P Shield, she didn't choose it because I shoot the full-size M&P. She said she didn't even think of that, or wasn't even aware of that as much. She chose it because of the way it feels in her hand, the size of it, the way she shoots it, and just overall comfort and just, I guess, reliability that she felt with it. So the fact that she chose the Shield also made me feel a little bit better. So we went out and got 2 of them, and we've done a few different modifications to one of them. That's mine. The other one we've left stock, that's hers. She's just getting into this part. She does not yet have her permit, so she's just now starting that. So she's still a ways away from actually carrying this one. I've had my permit for years, going back, good grief, to the early 90s. So this is not new to me, but it's something that's newer to her. The fact that we got springtime is here now and summer's just around the corner, having something a little bit smaller and more concealable is appealing. So timing wise, this worked out pretty well for us. All right, so that's the quick 2 cents on why we have 2 of these here. Now what I'm going to do, first we'll do a quick safety check to show you that everything is safe. Magazine is empty. You can see hopefully that the chamber is empty for 1. For 2 of these. All right, so let's talk real quickly here about what's different on these 2 guns. And hopefully up first it's not as easy to see, and then it will become more apparent. This one on top is mine, and I do have the Talon grips, the rubberized grips on this one. This one does not have anything on it. My wife actually likes it this way. Now my regular M&P, I don't have anything on the grips. There's just a little bit of a different feel. Maybe it's because the grips are bigger, but when I hold the full-size M&P, it feels good. There's no issue at all with me as far as the tackiness or the comfort. And this one wasn't too bad. When I held this one, and I'll use this one as an example, without anything on it, you can see this large area here, and I guess because it's a smaller grip, your hand has less area to purchase the gun. And for me, I just felt, you know, in a normal circumstance like right now, there's a lot of comfort there. There's no issues. But I'm trying to think of what would happen if you're in a situation where you actually have to use this in a self-defense situation. Your hands might be a little sweaty. Maybe you're outside, maybe it's raining or snowing, or who knows what. There could be a number of different reasons why there's a chance, as small as it may be, that your hands might be wet, and there might be something that impacts your ability to get a firm purchase on the gun. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should run out today and buy Talon grips or skater's tape or anything like that. This is all personal preference. This is my personal preference. For me, I decided to go with the rubberized version of the Talon grips. And again, hopefully you couldn't tell that right away, because these guys did a great job. As those of you who already use Talon grips know, the cut, the detail, if you put them on correctly, you can see on the gun here, let me show you this a little bit more clearly. You'll be able to see on the grip here, that's the Smith Wesson logo right here, the M&P logo. Well, for the Talon grip, there's a cutout in the grip for that. You can see the outline of the what would be a back strap, and the shield are not removable. That same cutout is almost intact here. There's a little bit here holding it together, but the cuts here across the front of the back of the grip is fantastic. It fit. The cutout for the magazine release is perfect. So overall, and again, we've got the logo on this side as well. If you take a few extra minutes to put these on correctly, then they look like they came with a gun. You know, it's not some hack job. It's just a regular, normal looking grip on it. I went with the rubberized grip because this is for concealed carry, and the tacky skater's tape sandpaper style finish to me just wasn't that appealing. All right, so that's one big difference between the two. The only other difference, and as you look at the sights on this is the sights you get with M&P. These are your standard M&P 3-dot sights. Nothing wrong with them. They work better. I think I like these a lot better than the standard Glock sights. I think you've heard me talk about that in some other videos. All my Glocks, I changed out the sights first thing. I do not like the standard Glock sights. And this one, as you're going to see, these are different sights. These are the XS, I believe, tritium night sights. These are the big dots. I like the yellow. I do not like the orange. Again, my personal preference. I'm not saying the orange is bad or wrong. That's just my personal preference. But these, and it's nice because it's a large yellow dot, it's very easy to pick up. It's a very easy sight to find. When you're looking down the sights, that yellow dot is there. You can't miss it. But the center of it, as well as the two rear dots, are tritium, so they do glow in the dark, and they're very easy to pick up at nighttime as well. Otherwise, as you look at it from the side profile, they're very, very similar profile-wise to the stock sights. So those are the only two differences between the two guns: the Talon rubberized grip and the big dot sights. Otherwise, like I said, exact same firearm. Now, let's talk about the firearm itself for a few minutes and why I ended up looking at this or chose this particular one. One of the things I'd like to talk about here real quickly, and again, no surprise, you know I like to go over some of the basic stats, and this is all information that I got off the internet, so you could very easily as well. But to give you some summary, one of the things that I was torn between, if you will, or considering when I was looking for a smaller concealed carry than the Glock 19 or the Glock 23, is I wanted to go smaller, but I didn't want to go tiny. There are smaller carry guns out there. We're all very familiar with that. I didn't want to go too small. And then I'm thinking, well, capacity is something that you have to be aware of too. And I'll get to that here in just a moment. But the three guns that I guess was balancing for myself and my own thought process was the Shield, the M&P 9 Compact, and the Glock 26. And then I got to look at those three, and those are the three I guess that got the most of my attention. The Glock 26 I very quickly ruled out. I've not ever really been a big fan of the baby Glocks. The grip is just too small. And bear with me for a moment, I'll go over that here in just a second. And it's small this way, not thickness, but the length, or I guess the height of the gun on the baby Glocks is just too small for me comfort-wise. And I realize, hopefully you're not using a concealed carry gun for a lengthy period of time. Hopefully whatever issue you have to use it for is quickly resolved. But at any rate, you can't be sure of that. So I pretty quickly ruled out the Glock 26, which brought me down to the M&P Shield and the M&P 9 Compact. And when you start looking at the numbers, and I'm going to go over these here in just a second, when you start looking at all the different numbers, the 9 Compact kind of fell right in between the 26 and the Shield. And kind of also fell in between the full size, well not the full size, the Glock 19 and the Shield. And the reason I ended up going with the Shield between that and the Compact is the width and how skinny the gun is. And I'll show you here in just a second on that. What you give up for that, however, is magazine capacity. So that was a pretty serious consideration that I had to give some time to. But ultimately what it came down to for me was the fact that the Shield is a more comfortable gun to conceal carry than the Compact would have been, or the 26, or for that matter, the 19. So that's what ended up causing me to go with the Shield. Let's talk about some stats here. First of all, as I said earlier, both of these shields are 9mm. They also make this exact same size and everything else in the 40, but this is the 9. They do not, at this time, make a Shield in 45. It is only available in 9mm and 40. It is a striker fire, obviously a polymer grip. The length, 6.1 inches. I'm going to give you some information how that compares. On the 9 Compact, which is 6.7 inches, so it's about a ½ inch shorter. The Glock 26 is 6.4 inches, so it's about a ¼ inch shorter length than that. So in that regards, of those three, it's the smallest. The height is 4.6 inches, as it is here. There's two different magazines you can put in this, and with the bigger of the two magazines, it still comes in under 5 inches in height. The Compact, surprisingly, is slightly smaller at 4.3 inches, and the Glock is 4.2 inches. So of the three, in regards to this distance, this is actually the biggest, but by a very small fraction. The width on the Compact, again, another major reason I went with this, is less than an inch. It's 0.95 inches. The Compact is 1.18 inches. The Glock 26, like all, well, but most of the Glocks, is also 1.18 inches. So again, the Shield, thinnest. The barrel length, 3.1 inches. On the Compact, it is 3.5 inches. And on the Glock 26, it is 3.42 inches. So the shortest barrel here, again, it's also the shortest slide. So I guess part of that is you're going to give up a little bit of barrel length, which of course there's some impact as far as velocity and accuracy, but it's minimal. And when you're talking about a ¼ inch or so, what you're giving up there versus what you're gaining in concealability, I think that's a fair trade-off. All right, weight. This is another big thing for me. The Shield comes in at 19 ounces. Of course, these weights are all unloaded. The Shield comes in at 19 ounces. The Compact comes in at 21.7 ounces. And the Glock 26 comes in at 21.71 ounces. The sight radius on the Shield, 5.3 inches. On the Compact is 5.7 inches. And on the Glock 26, 5.39, I almost call it 5.4 inches. So again, the Shield has the shortest sight radius, so you're sacrificing a little bit of accuracy there, but again, we're talking about tenths of an inch here, so it's not terribly significant. All right, capacity. Now this is a big deal for me here. The easy appeal, if you will, as far as the Glock 26 is the fact that it holds 10 rounds in the magazine plus 1 in the chamber. So a 10-round magazine for a concealed carry gun is certainly appealing. The compact, the M&P 9 compact, holds 12 plus 1 in the magazine. Now the way that they're both able to accomplish that is that they're basically double stack magazines. This is a single stack, so the fact that this is significantly thinner, you give up some capacity. Now, the capacity for the Shield, and this is what I want to talk about. There are 2 different magazines, and one of each comes with the Shield, which is something we'll go over here a little bit later on. You can see this one is a little bit longer. You get 1 more round. So with the thin magazine, you're going to get 7, and with the extended, you're going to get a capacity of 8. So 7 or 8 plus 1 in the chamber. So you're giving up 2 if you want to compare it to the Glock 26, and you're giving up 4 if you're comparing it to the compact. That's pretty significant, but again, we're talking about something that's a concealed weapon and not a duty weapon, not something that is going to stick out on your belt for the world to see, to let them know, you know, that you mean business, especially if you're law enforcement, especially if you're somebody, if you live in a state where you can just walk around with a gun hanging off your side and you're trying to intimidate people. I guess that's something that's a little bit different. But as far as concealed carry, as far as being able to not let people know that you're carrying, giving up a couple of rounds and gaining that concealability is a consideration that you have to be aware of. I'm not here to tell anybody one way or the other which is better or which is more important. I'm simply telling you what my process was, what I was thinking about when I made the decision. All right, a couple of things we do want to talk about here. We already mentioned that these are polymer. They're all polymer, the Glocks, the M&P Compact, and the M&P Shields. Trigger pull. All right, we all know the Glock's factory is 5.5 pound trigger pull. I've already mentioned in my videos of the Glocks that I've reviewed so far that I have done some very minor modifications in mine, and mine are right around 5, maybe a little bit under 5 pounds. I do not want to go lower than that, certainly not for a concealed carry item. I agree with the people that say for a concealed carry weapon, you do not want to have a real light trigger pull. And if you don't understand the reasoning behind that, it's because if you have a real light trigger pull on a weapon that you have concealed carry, there's 2 areas that could really get you in trouble here. One, just in drawing or handling your weapon, if you accidentally bump the trigger in certain circumstances, it could discharge. You don't want that. And also, if you've pulled the weapon in a self-defense situation and you're still trying to defuse that situation, ideally you never have to fire a round. You can talk your way out of it. Well, there's a very sense of heightened emotion during that type of situation. And if you have a really light trigger pull and your emotions are just bouncing all over the place, there's a lot of yelling and screaming perhaps, or there's a million things going through your mind. The last thing you need to be worrying about is also how much trigger pressure you're putting on your trigger. So too light of a trigger pull could be detrimental for a carry weapon. For a competition gun, this is a whole different situation, but these would not likely be your competition guns. M&P Shields come in right around, I've seen 6.5 pounds listed as the factory trigger pull weight on both of these, and I've done nothing to any of the triggers on these. I'm leaving them alone. These are factory triggers, and all the internals are all factory. For me, this one comes in at about 5.7 to 5.8 pounds. This one comes in at 5.9 to 6.1. Weird, but it's still pretty close. So right around 6 pounds, we'll call it, as far as the trigger pull. Now, in my review of my full-size M&P, I did get the Apex decac trigger job in that, and that did lighten that trigger pull up to right around 5 pounds, as well as some other stuff done to it. So, but again, that's the one I use for IDPA, not for the standard. Now, another thing, let's talk about the trigger while we're on the subject of triggers here for a quick second. And this is kind of weird, especially for those of you out there who are familiar with the not so long lineage of the M&P series that's only been out for 5 or 6 years or so, 7 years. For a long time, the triggers that came in the full-size M&Ps were I don't want to say bad, but they weren't good. There was a reputation that they had of needing work right out of the box. If you were just going to the range and going to shoot a box or two of ammo every couple months, then they were fine. But if you were looking for a trigger with a solid reset, with an audible reset, something that was consistent, that didn't have a whole lot of goop in it, if you're looking for a trigger that was well, maybe not comparable to a 1911, but maybe along the lines of a Glock. Glocks have pretty solid triggers. They're not perfect, but they're not too bad. You weren't going to find that in the M&P without getting some work done to it. Now, they have fixed that from what I understand, but that's why I had on both of my full-size M&Ps, the 9 and the 40, I had that Apex trigger system put into it. What I'm learning is that two things have happened since then. One, when the Shield line came out, I guess the initial triggers in those were decent, perhaps an improvement over what the full-size M&Ps had, but there were some small issues and they worked on it. And I guess the more recent guns, which both of these are brand new. They were both test fired in December of 2013, so they're just a couple of months old. They have the newest trigger system. Now, I am not an M&P or Smith Wesson expert of any kind. I don't pretend to be. I do own a few of them, so I think I have some insight. So I don't have all of the specifics, but whatever changes they made that resulted in this most recent trigger, these are very, very solid triggers. I would like to say this trigger system is very comparable, if not better than, the Apex trigger system I have in my full-size M&P. So I'm really happy with the triggers that come factory with the new Shields. Now, if you have an older Shield, depending on how old it is, you may or may not have that same trigger in yours. If it's one of the original ones, and these have only been out for about 2 years or so, if you have one of the original ones, you probably don't have this trigger drop. If you have one that's a year or so old, that's about, I guess, when the changes are starting to come into play. And if your M&P Shield is less than 3 or 4 months old, you do have one of the newer ones. But anyhow, the reason I mention that is for a concealed carry, you don't want to have a trigger that has a lot of slop in it. You don't want to have a trigger that you have to be thinking about. We've already talked about how trigger pull applies here. We also need to throw in the fact that if you're not sure when your trigger is going to break, if you're not sure when that gun's going to go boom, then you could be putting yourself in a situation that you don't want to be in. So the fact that it does come not only with a good trigger, but a really good trigger, I think will impress some people. Again, if you're somebody who's very knowledgeable in firearms and your knowledge of M&Ps is maybe not as up to date, you may be surprised to hear that. But give it a shot. Go to the range or find somebody you know that has one, borrow one, rent one, whatever you've got to do, and go put a few magazines down range with it, because the trigger on these is pretty solid. All right, let's talk real quickly here about some pros and cons, which kind of the segue would be the triggers on these. Let's talk about the obvious thing. We've already talked about it a few times, the size. You see how thin this is, less than an inch thick. It's very thin. Now I want to show you here for comparison's sake, I do have the full-size M&P, empty magazine, empty chamber. So this gun is safe. But let's look at the difference in width. You can see just how different this is.